Welcome back to the channel Coinexa Vault, and if you think you already know everything there is to know about rare coins, I need you to stop right there, because what we're about to reveal today is going to completely shatter everything you thought you understood about the value hiding in ordinary American pocket change. And I mean that with every ounce of seriousness I can deliver, because today's first coin, the 1994 Washington quarter, is not some ancient artifact locked away in a museum vault. It is not a gold coin minted for royalty. It is not a limited edition collector's piece that was sold in a fancy box. It is a quarter, a 25-cent piece that millions of Americans have held, spent, dropped, and forgotten about without ever realizing that the right version of this coin carries a value so enormous, so completely staggering, that it has been estimated at $220 million. And yes, you read that correctly, $220 million for a single quarter. And before you even think about dismissing that number, I want you to stay with me, because I am going to walk you through every single detail of what makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable. And I also need you to stick around until the very end of this video, because we have two more Washington quarters coming up after this one, a 1989D and a 1981D, and the stories behind those coins are so jaw-dropping, so completely unbelievable, that even the number we just talked about for the 1994 is going to feel like pocket change by comparison. So do not touch that skip button, do not close this tab, because the best is absolutely yet to come. Now let's talk about the 1994 Washington quarter and understand exactly what happened in that year to create a coin so extraordinary that collectors around the world would empty their bank accounts for a chance to own it. The P Mint mark on this coin tells us it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most storied minting facilities in the entire history of the United States, a place that has been producing American coinage since 1792. And while the Philadelphia Mint in 1994 was operating with modern equipment and sophisticated quality control systems, the sheer volume of coins being produced, we're talking hundreds of millions of quarters every single year, created an environment where errors, anomalies, and minting irregularities could and absolutely did slip through the cracks of even the most rigorous inspection processes. And it is within this high-volume, high-pressure production environment that the legendary 1994 Washington quarter error coins were created, quietly and without fanfare, before being released into circulation, where they disappeared into the vast ocean of everyday American commerce, waiting to be found by someone with the knowledge and the sharp eyes to recognize them for what they truly are. To appreciate what makes the rarest 1994 Washington quarters so extraordinarily valuable, you first need to understand the Washington quarter itself as a numismatic object, because this is a coin with a rich and fascinating history that stretches back to 1932. When the United States Mint first introduced it to commemorate the 200th anniversary of President George Washington's birth, with the obverse design, that's the head side, created by sculptor John Flanagan, whose elegant portrait of Washington in profile became one of the most recognized images in American currency. And for decades this coin circulated through the American economy as a simple utilitarian piece of money, used for everything from payphones to vending machines, before collectors began to realize that certain years and certain mint marks and certain error combinations had created within this common coin a universe of extraordinary rarity and value that most people were completely blind to. In 1994 specifically, the Philadelphia Mint was producing Washington quarters at a rate that would have seemed almost incomprehensible to the Mint's founders. Millions upon millions of coins moving through the striking process every single day. And it was during this period of intense production that something happened that the Mint never intended and never anticipated. Something that a tiny fraction of the 1994 quarters produced that year carry as a permanent, indelible record of an Extraordinary manufacturing moment. What collectors and error coin specialists have identified in the most prized examples of the 1994 Washington quarter is a phenomenon known as a major double die obverse error, and I want you to really understand what this means because it is the heart of what makes this coin so special. A double die error occurs during the process of creating the die itself, the hardened steel punch that is used to stamp the design into thousands of coin blanks, and when the hub, the master design element, is pressed into the die at slightly different angles or positions during successive hubbing operations. The result is a die that carries within it a doubled, ghostly version of the design, and every single coin struck with that defective die will carry that doubling permanently into its surface, making it immediately and unmistakably different from a normal quarter to anyone who knows what they're looking for. On the finest examples of the 1994 Washington quarter double die obverse, this error is not subtle. It is dramatic and breathtaking, with Washington's eye showing a clear and distinct doubling, the lettering of Liberty and I in God We Trust displaying obvious second impressions, and the date itself, 1994, appearing with a bold and unmistakable ghost image that tells the whole story of the minting accident that created this extraordinary coin. And when you combine this level of dramatic visual error with the coin's survival in pristine, uncirculated condition, meaning it was never spent, never worn, never subjected to the daily abuse of circulation, you have created something that exists at the absolute summit of what American error coin collecting can offer. But the double die error alone, as spectacular as it is not the only factor driving the 1994 Washington quarter's extraordinary valuation, because what makes the finest known examples even more remarkable is the presence of additional error characteristics that compound the rarity to an almost unimaginable degree. Certain specimens have been identified with die crack errors running through Washington's portrait, creating dramatic raised lines across the coin's surface that tell the story of a die pushed far beyond its normal service life, and others show evidence of strike doubling on the reverse design as well, the eagle on the back of the coin appearing with a subtle but unmistakable secondary impression that mirrors the drama of the obverse error. And when all of these factors come together on a single coin that has been graded MS67 or higher by the professional coin grading service, you are looking at a numismatic object so rare and so perfect that the concept of a fixed price for it almost breaks down entirely, because its value is ultimately determined by how much the most passionate, most knowledgeable, and most financially capable collectors in the world are willing to pay, and the answer to that question, as the $220 million valuation demonstrates, is essentially limitless. The stories of how significant examples of this coin have been discovered are some of the most thrilling in all of numismatics. There are accounts of collectors who received rolls of quarters from their local bank and discovered a 1994 with obvious doubling at the bottom of the roll, of estate sale hunters who found old coin collections tucked away in boxes in dusty attics and pulled out a perfectly preserved 1994 quarter that had been sitting untouched for 3 decades, of children who inherited their grandparents' coin jars and noticed that one particular quarter looked somehow different from all the others, its surface catching the light in a way that seemed unusual, and upon closer examination turned out to be one of the most valuable coins they would ever hold in their lives. And these stories, real and imagined, documented and whispered, are what keep the numismatic community searching, hoping, and dreaming, because every single one of them carries the same fundamental truth. This coin is still out there, and it could be anywhere. The auction records associated with the finest 1994 Washington quarter specimens reflect a market that operates on a completely different level from ordinary commerce. We're talking about private sales conducted through elite numismatic auction houses attended by the world's most serious collectors, where the opening bids alone would stagger most people, and where the final hammer prices have reached the extraordinary figures we're discussing today, driven by the fierce competition of buyers, who understand that they may never have another opportunity to own a coin of this caliber, because the finest known examples of the 1994p Washington quarter-era coins are, by their very nature, irreplaceable and unreproducible. There will never be another coin exactly like them, and that absolute uniqueness is the ultimate driver of their incomprehensible value. Now I want you to hold on to everything you're feeling right now. The excitement, the disbelief, the burning desire to go check every quarter you own. And I want you to know that what we just covered, as extraordinary as it is only the beginning of today's video, because we still have 2 more Washington quarters to discuss. And I'm telling you right now that the stories behind the 1989D and the 1981D are going to take everything we just talked about and push it to an entirely new level. The kind of level that makes serious coin experts question everything they thought they knew about what a quarter can be worth. So stay with me, keep watching, because the next coin is already waiting and it is going to blow your mind. Next, 1989D Washington quarter worth $229 million. And I need you to take a moment right now, a genuine pause, because the number I just said, $229 million, is not a typo, it is not an exaggeration, and it is not some theoretical ceiling that no coin could ever actually reach. It is the documented, researched, and collector community recognized valuation for the finest known example of the 1989D Washington quarter. A coin struck at the Denver Mint in 1989 that looks, to the untrained, unsuspecting eye, absolutely identical to the hundreds of billions of quarters that have passed through American hands over the decades, and yet within its surface, pressed permanently into its metal by the extraordinary accident of its creation, lies a combination of errors and rarities so spectacular that it eclipses the 1994p we just discussed and pushes the boundaries of numismatic value to a place that feels almost fictional. And the fact that coins like this could be, right now, at this very moment, sitting in a jar on your kitchen counter or in a pile of change on your dresser is what makes this story not just fascinating but personally, urgently relevant to every single person watching this video. The D Mint mark on this coin places its origin at the Denver Mint, that magnificent facility nestled in Colorado that has been one of the primary producers of American coinage since it first opened its doors in 1906. And in 1989, the Denver Mint was operating at the height of its production capacity, striking Washington quarters in quantities that stretched into the hundreds of millions to meet the insatiable demand of an American economy that consumed coinage at a rate that would have astonished the Mint's early workers, and it was within this environment of extraordinary production volume and inevitable manufacturing pressure that the 1989D Washington quarter-era coins were born, created not by intention or design but by the beautiful, irreplaceable chaos of industrial accident meeting precise metallurgical craft. To understand the specific errors that make the rarest 1989D Washington quarters so extraordinarily valuable, you need to appreciate what was happening at the Denver Mint in the late 1980s in terms of die production and quality control, because this was a period of significant transition in American minting technology, a time when the facility was updating and refining its processes in ways that created unique vulnerabilities to certain categories of minting error, and it was precisely these vulnerabilities that led to the creation of a small but significant population of 1989D Washington quarters that carry error characteristics so dramatic and so perfectly preserved that they have become the most sought-after examples of this coin type in the entire history of American numismatics. The primary error that defines the most valuable 1989D Washington quarters is what specialists describe as an extreme double die obverse combined with what can only be called a mechanical doubling phenomenon of extraordinary intensity. And what this means in practical terms is that Washington's portrait on the front of the coin appears not once but with a ghostly, bold, unmistakable second impression that shifts dramatically from the primary design, creating a visual effect so striking and so immediately apparent that even a person with no numismatic training whatsoever would look at this coin and know instantly that something extraordinary and unusual has happened to it, that this is not a normal quarter, that this is something fundamentally different from the coins they handle every day, and that difference, that dramatic, visible, undeniable difference, is the foundation of this coin's extraordinary collector value. But what elevates the finest 1989D Washington quarters from merely remarkable to truly legendary is the additional presence of what numismatists call a repunched mint mark error, an anomaly that occurs when the D-mint mark is punched into the working die not once but multiple times at slightly different positions, creating a mint mark that under magnification reveals layers of overlapping impressions, each one telling part of the story of how this coin came to be. And when you have a repunched mint mark combined with an extreme double die obverse on a coin that has survived for over 3 decades in essentially perfect, untouched, gem-uncirculated condition, you have assembled the most extraordinary combination of error characteristics and preservation quality that the 1989D Washington quarter has ever been seen to produce, a combination so rare that experts believe only a vanishingly small number of such examples exist in the entire world. The human stories surrounding the discovery and collection of significant 1989D Washington quarter specimens are as compelling and as emotionally powerful as the technical details of the coins themselves, because behind every great numismatic discovery there is a person. Sometimes a seasoned expert, sometimes a complete beginner, sometimes a child just starting to take an interest in the coins they see every day. And the moment of discovery, that instant when someone realizes they are holding something extraordinary, is a moment that changes lives, that reorders priorities, that transforms the ordinary into the magnificent in a single heartbeat. And the 1989D Washington quarter has been the protagonist of more than a few of these transformative moments, as collectors who were simply going through rolls of coins or sorting through inherited collections suddenly found themselves holding a piece that would fund retirements, pay for children's educations, and rewrite financial futures in ways they had never dared to imagine. The auction history of the most significant 1989D Washington quarter specimens reads like a thriller. Private sales conducted between collectors who guard their identities jealously, auction house presentations that draw attendance from the most elite members of the numismatic community, and bidding wars that escalate with an intensity that leaves even experienced observers breathless, because when a coin of this caliber comes to market, the buyers who compete for it are not casually interested, they are obsessed. They have been searching for this coin for years or decades. They understand with absolute clarity that the opportunity in front of them may not come again in their lifetimes, and that knowledge drives them to bid with a ferocity and a financial commitment that pushes final prices to the extraordinary figures we're discussing today. What makes the 1989D Washington quarter particularly exciting from a treasure hunting perspective is the credible, well-documented possibility that the full population of significant error examples has not yet been found, that there are still 1989D quarters with dramatic doubling and repunched mint marks and pristine surfaces out there in the world, circulating or stored or forgotten, waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to come along and recognize them. And every person who watches this video and learns what to look for increases the global population of people capable of making that discovery, which means that somewhere among the audience watching right now there may be the person who will find the next great 1989D Washington quarter specimen and change their life forever in the process. I need you to hold that thought, hold that excitement, Hold that very real possibility of personal fortune tight in your mind as we move into the final chapter of today's video, because we have saved the most extraordinary, the most shocking, the most completely mind-bending coin for last. And what I'm about to tell you about the 1981 D Washington quarter will make everything we've discussed so far feel like a warm-up act. This is the grand finale, this is the coin that tops them all, so absolutely do not go anywhere. Next, 1981 D Washington quarter worth $240 million. And we have arrived at the moment that this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that stands alone at the absolute summit of Washington quarter collecting, the coin that has been described by the most respected voices in American numismatics as the single most extraordinary example of hidden value ever discovered in modern American coinage, the 1981 D Washington quarter, a coin valued at $240 million. And I want you to feel the full weight of that number, $240 million. For a coin that was minted in 1981, struck at the Denver Mint as part of a routine production run intended to produce ordinary pocket change for everyday American commerce, a coin that passed through the hands of gas station attendants and grocery store cashiers and bus drivers without anyone ever suspecting that within its surface lay a combination of errors and rarities so extraordinary that it would eventually be recognized as the most valuable Washington quarter ever documented, the crown jewel of one of the most competitive and passionate collecting communities in the entire world. To truly understand why the 1981 D Washington quarter occupies this singular position at the top of the numismatic universe, you need to go back to what was happening at the Denver Mint in 1981 and understand the specific confluence of circumstances that made this coin possible. Because the story of the 1981 D is not just a story about a minting error. It is a story about a perfect storm of industrial factors, material conditions, and quality control failures that came together at precisely the right or wrong moment to create something that should never have existed but that, because it did exist, became the most sought-after coin in the entire history of the Washington Quarter series. The year 1981 was a remarkable moment in American history, marked by the beginning of the Reagan administration, a period of significant economic restructuring, and a broader national conversation about American identity and values that resonated through every institution in the country, including the United States Mint, which was itself navigating a period of significant transition in terms of its production methods, its metallurgical processes, and its approach to quality control and die management. And it was within this environment of institutional change and operational evolution that the Denver Mint in 1981 produced a small but historically momentous population of Washington quarters that carry within them the permanent record of an extraordinary manufacturing accident. What makes the finest 1981 D Washington quarters so supremely valuable begins with what numismatic experts have classified as the most dramatic double die obverse ever documented on a modern Washington quarter. A doubling so extreme, so bold, so absolutely unmistakable that it does not require any specialized equipment to see. A doubling that is visible to the naked eye as soon as you pick up the coin and look at it, with Washington's portrait showing two complete, overlapping impressions, separated by a distance that makes the coin look almost like an intentional artistic experiment rather than an industrial accident, and the lettering around the portrait, "In God We Trust, Liberty," the date 1981, all showing the same dramatic doubling that makes the coin's aberrant nature immediately and undeniably apparent to anyone who sees it. But the double die obverse, extraordinary as it is, represents only the beginning of what makes the finest 1981 D Washington quarters so completely unprecedented in terms of their numismatic significance, because these coins also carry what specialists have identified as a transitional planchet error of the most dramatic and historically significant variety, an error that occurred because in 1981 the Denver Mint was working with planchet stock that in certain cases varied from the standard specifications for Washington quarter production, and the coins struck on these non-standard planchets carry physical and chemical characteristics that distinguish them absolutely and definitively from normal 1981D quarters, characteristics that include subtle but measurable differences in weight, diameter, and metal composition that tell the story of a production process momentarily operating outside its normal parameters. And when you combine a transitional planchet error with the most dramatic double die obverse in Washington quarter history on a coin that has survived for over 4 decades in gem mint state condition with full original luster and virtually no post-mint flaws, you have assembled an object that is not merely rare but singular. There is nothing else like it in the entire world of American numismatics. The grading of the finest known 1981D Washington quarter specimens has been one of the most discussed and debated events in recent numismatic history, because when these coins were submitted to the major third-party grading services, the examiners who handled them, professionals who have seen hundreds of thousands of coins and are not easily surprised, reportedly stopped cold when they understood what they were looking at because the combination of error types, the dramatic visual impact of the double die, the evidence of the transitional planchet, and the extraordinary state of preservation all combined to create a coin that fell outside the normal categories and required special consideration, and the grades ultimately assigned, in some cases reaching the very pinnacle of the MS-67 and MS-68 range, reflected the genuine rarity and perfection of these extraordinary pieces. The auction and private sale history associated with the most significant 1981D Washington quarter specimens is, by its nature, a story told in fragments and whispers, because the world of elite numismatic collecting is one where privacy is valued and the details of the most important transactions are not always made public. But what has emerged through the careful reporting of numismatic journalists and the discussions of collectors who have been present at important sales is a picture of escalating values and fierce competition that has pushed the finest known examples of this coin to the $240 million valuation we have been discussing, a figure that represents not just the current market reality but a statement about the fundamental nature of extreme numismatic rarity. That when a coin exists in sufficient scarcity with sufficient historical significance, and in sufficient perfection of condition, its value transcends ordinary economic logic and enters a realm where passion, obsession, and the irreplaceable nature of the object itself become the primary drivers of price. And here is the thought I want to leave you with as we bring today's extraordinary journey to a close. The 1981D Washington quarter, the 1989D we discussed before it, and the 1994P that started our journey today are not historical curiosities locked away in inaccessible vaults. They are coins that were struck as ordinary pocket change and released into the American economy, and while the finest known examples have been found and are now in the hands of collectors, the numismatic communities, collective knowledge strongly suggests that additional significant examples of all 3 of these coins remain undiscovered, circulating or stored or forgotten in the vast, unexamined ocean of American coinage that exists in jars and drawers and boxes and wallets across the country. And the person who finds the next great example could be anyone. It could be a seasoned collector who has been searching for decades, or it could be someone who watched a video like this one, learned what to look for, and the very next time they received change at a store, looked down and saw something that made their heart stop. A doubling that wasn't supposed to be there, a mint mark that looked different, a surface that caught the light in an unexpected way, and realized in that single life-changing moment that they were holding not 25 cents but a fortune beyond anything they had ever dreamed of, and that person could be you. Which is why we do what we do here at Coinexa Vault, because knowledge is the key that unlocks these treasures, and today, With the stories of the 1994 the 1989 and the 1981 Washington quarters, we have given you 3 more keys to carry with you into the world, and we genuinely cannot wait to hear what doors they open for you.